You won't believe what fans claim they just witnessed. Evelyn and Ty's husband's late-night meetings are said to have slipped into the group chat that no one was allowed to see, according to those in the room, when Chantel took the mic on Jackie's stage. We are responding to what attendees and insiders say was said backstage and teased on broadcast. We are not verifying any of this. The room became silent. A seat filler in the audience whispered, "Oh no," as if the word alone could turn back time, while Jackie straightened her cards and Chantel's voice quivered just enough to hurt. Fans were taken aback, feelings were running hot, and the family was split in 2 seconds, half pleading for forgiveness before a rumor ruined anyone's marriage, the other half demanding receipts. Instead of calling it proof, Chantel referred to it as context, stating that the purported timestamps and places appeared too precise to ignore, as silence fell across the floor like a spill that no one could quickly clean up. If you believe people near the stage, Evelyn's face hardly moved. Ty's name began to trend before the event ended, and Jackie, attempting to quell a commotion without identifying it, repeatedly said, "No one gets blindsided tonight." Once more, we're not claiming that this truly occurred. Rather, we're confirming what others claim to have witnessed. The question that is currently consuming every timeline is straightforward and cruel. Is this a miscommunication with sloppy optics, or is this the spark that ignites a silent friendship? A silence that didn't feel like calm but more like a held breath is described by those who claim to have been close enough to see the stage lights reflected in the guests' eyes. They claim that Chantel spoke quietly when she informed Jackie that she had context, not proof, regarding late-night meetings between Evelyn and Ty's spouse. They further claimed that this context had reportedly leaked from a secret thread into the larger rumor mill. We are reiterating what attendees and backstage personnel say was alluded to when the countdown clock blinked red, but we are not verifying any of this. As if tone alone could prevent a storm from developing, a floor producer murmured, "Stay gentle," into a headset as the audience leaned forward as one and the chat wall flooded. Under the amber lighting, Jackie's set appeared cozy and inviting, the kind of warmth that typically eases tension in a living room. It did the exact reverse tonight. With the condensation beads moving in straight lines like soldiers, even the water glasses appeared anxious. One little element that many people felt conveyed more meaning than the words was that Ty sat with her hands folded so tightly that her knuckles blanched. Evelyn raised her chin, inclined her shoulders toward the camera, and had a sculpture-like expression of tranquility etched on her face. The split felt like a fault line running beneath every seat in the room as fans expressed disbelief repeatedly on the live feed and others typed, "Let them talk in private." Jackie carefully cleared her throat before saying, "We are here to listen without harm." This statement didn't promise anything, but it at least pointed the night away from the cliff. Despite not reading from her phone, Chantel raised it. According to her, the locations and times in the purported thread appeared too tidy to ignore, and the map pins corresponded with evenings when everyone believed the day was over. According to a lighting technician, you could hear the air conditioner kicking up, which is like the room's heartbeat accelerating. The audience, strangely, didn't applaud or jeer. Instead, they grew so motionless that the hum of the cameras became the loudest sound. Ty exhaled gently before saying, "If there are questions about my home, ask them without turning me into a headline." Evelyn then raised her voice. She declared, "I am not here to encourage speculation." It was a line drawn with calm hands, not a confession or a denial. "I am here to protect my dignity." We are describing how the room responded to the notion of the thread, not asserting that it exists as described. Chantel apologized for the timing, but a seat filler two rows back told a friend afterwards that quiet had been hurting things off camera. People appreciate a clean language to contain complicated thoughts, so when she stated, "I should have found a gentler door," it became popular within an hour. After giving a nod, Jackie turned to the audience and urged them to limit their queries to human-sized ones. That one decision changed the mood from a courtroom to a living room with the blinds half down. A producer placed a tiny wooden box on the table behind the main cameras. There were blank cards inside for a fun game that nobody wanted to play just now. Jackie used the delay to establish terms after touching the lid as though to say, "Later." She declared, No screenshots on air. Chantel concurred, saying, "No names we don't already own." Ty concurred. Evelyn concurred. Even if it wasn't peace, it sounded like a ceasefire. In this reality, it is considered progress when the chat slows down from a torrent to a strong stream. The following events, according to multiple crew members, were less dramatic than the rumors suggested. Chantel explained how someone in the inner group allegedly encouraged her to step in before the internet did it with knives, rather than using the phone as a sign. "I was clumsy," she acknowledged. Those who were close enough to view Jackie's face say she softened a millimeter, just enough to bring nuance into the room, but the request was about care. Ty's shoulders somewhat drooped. Evelyn's little loop of movement, which resembled someone recovering her body under a microscope, caused her hands to unclench in her lap and then rest again. The mention of hotel lobbies and parking lot timestamps, the kinds of details that seem essential until you understand how many ways an average night can appear spectacular when told out of order, came next, and this is the part that everyone will remember differently. Chantel stressed that she was unable to confirm those information, simply that they were mentioned in the purported discussion, in a sound op says. "That's why I said context, not proof," she continued, adding that some people care about the distinction. Others find it to be an uncomfortable distinction. In the second and third rows, there was a lot of emotion. One person whispered, "This is cruel," while another said, "This might be necessary." The family was split, and not just theirs. The show's fan base split, apartment-watching friend group split, and even the crew silently divided along their private thresholds for what constitutes care. Jackie folded the conversation inward after grabbing it by the edges. She inquired about Ty's current definition of safety. Ty asked Evelyn what respect meant and replied, "Privacy and a timeline I choose." Evelyn asked Chantel what accountability meant and replied, "No performance of my pain." There was nothing explosive in their responses. That absence felt radical in a place that prizes fire. Chantel stated, "Stepping back and handing over what I was shown to people who can verify or debunk without turning it into a circus." There was a silence that was all undertow and breath, like the interior of a seashell. Then, during a quick Q&A, a teacher raised a hand from the audience. Jackie didn't respond right away when she questioned, "How do you tell the truth without tearing someone you love apart, especially when thousands are watching?" She waited while glancing at the three women. These aren't pyrotechnics, but they're the kind of sentences people put on sticky notes and tuck into mirrors. Ty said, "You ask for permission first." Evelyn said, "You accept a no without punishment." Chantel said, "You hold your own fear so you don't drop it on someone else." We are mapping the contours of what people claim to have heard, not confirming any claims. A minor twist occurred when a grainy still of a lobby with a timestamp showed on a side monitor. This was probably a control room error. Half of the crowd missed it because it blinked away so quickly, but the other half saw enough to gasp. "We do not project stories onto shadows," Jackie remarked, raising a firm hand. It wasn't a reprimand or a defensive gesture. Rather, it was a hand on a railing in a room that had begun to tilt. A mumble followed the gasp, and then there was listening once more. A stage manager set a thin folder next to Jackie's cards a little while later. It included a typical protocol sheet, if allegations are to be believed, explaining how purported things go from rumor to review without becoming content. Jackie said into the microphone after sliding it closer. She declared, "If there is anything that needs to be checked, it will be checked by professionals, not by applause." There were a few applauses, the type that acknowledges relief, but not victory. Ty gave Evelyn a look. Evelyn turned to face Ty. There were no fake hugs or grins, only the understanding that they had decided to shield themselves from attention for the moment. The three sat on the same couch with a cushion between them and cups of lukewarm tea in their hands in the green room afterwards, according to two makeup artists who have a keen sense of emotional weather. While a producer set up a private room later in the week, there were no speeches or scripts, just a shared look at the same point on the carpet. A small plate of ginger cookies was left on the table with a note that said, "For steady hands." That detail may sound made up, but 3 different people brought it up. So it's either true or the kind of tender fiction that crowds make up when they want a more subdued ending than the one that a night like this typically provides. Meanwhile, conflicting certainties hummed in the sidewalk outside the studio. One side maintained that the late-night gatherings were just work sessions that were misinterpreted by weary eyes. The pattern, according to another, was too obvious to be a coincidence. We're not picking one above the other. We're seeing how a tale gains momentum as soon as it exits a room, how it runs faster than verification can keep up, and how it returns to the door from whence it fled and knocks twice, pleading to be allowed back under a more respectable name. In addition to receiving its fair share of eye rolls, Jackie's team's brief letter thanking viewers for holding nuance also garnered a surprisingly high number of silent admirers. Half exhausted, half buzzing, the audience flowed out with that post-show swing. No one on stage chuckled as a fan standing by the barricade exclaimed, "We love all of you." Ty and a staff member went out a side door, followed by Evelyn, who had a jacket slung over her shoulders, and Chantel, who was by herself a minute later with her phone still facing down. Because that is the type of leadership that rarely trends but frequently mends minor rips before they become rips, Jackie stayed until the home lights went out, checking on camera operations, pause, and the person who refills the candy dish. A stagehand was heard telling a co-worker, "The story is loud, but they were gentle," as the stage doors eventually closed and the riggers started coiling cables. This isn't the type of review that gets cut for a commercial, but it might be the only thing that put everyone to sleep. We are unable to predict the outcome of the purported thread, whether anyone will ever be able to confirm who urged Chantel to step in, or whether the timestamps are part of an innocent audit trail that just presents a sensational image. We may say that a room intended for spectacle attempted to avoid turning into an inferno for one night. Additionally, such decision can occasionally be a plot twist in a universe where hurt is edited into cliffhangers. People who say they worked the early shift say the studio felt like a library where every whisper carried weight, and by AM the story had taken on a life of its own. In addition to the purported thread, the overnight discussion now focused on what it meant because Jackie refused to allow screenshots to be used as props and that Chantel had presented it as context, rather than evidence. We are gathering how it sounded in hallways, automobiles, and comment sections that never shut down. We are not verifying any of this. The room wants a process, and the internet wants a verdict, said a father drinking a vase-sized cup of coffee. 3 words, consent, sequence, and compassion, were written and highlighted on the whiteboard inside the production office, according to someone who claims to have seen it. The board was only a compass, not a script. A junior producer kept saying, "No surprises on set," which has grown to be Jackie's catchphrase and shield. Fans gathered by the metal barricades outside, holding their phones aloft like candles. Fans Are Surprised was still trending, and the family was split along a line that felt personal rather than theatrical. One sign said, "Protect all hearts," while another said, "Show the receipts." A morning of purposeful quiet is described by many who claim to be close to Ty. If the words "I'm okay, not okay," and "okay again" seem like 3 truths at once, it's because some mornings are fractals. Posts were preserved, comments were left unread, and a single SMS message was sent to a select circle. Evelyn, meanwhile, was seen conversing with a woman who appeared to be a counselor in a peaceful area of the parking lot. She had a clipboard tucked under her arm, soft shoes, and a quieter voice. We are providing what onlookers inferred from posture and tone. We are unable to confirm the function. A snippet of their conversation purportedly floated, "You're allowed to say no to a public," as though the words itself wished to be heard by other people. With a folded piece of paper in her hand and her phone face down, Chantel came through a side entrance. According to a crew member, she repeatedly said, "I'll hand it over and step back," which she believes was a mantra for both self-control and damage control. There was no embrace or freeze when Jackie first saw her in the hallway by the props cage. Instead, there was only a line of 2 people waiting for the day to misquote them. According to a sound op walking by, Jackie stated, "We let professionals sort the timestamps. Let's sort out our friendship. The next 3 minutes could be the most contentious of the week." According to multiple accounts, Ty and Evelyn stopped when they happened to cross paths with a moving clothes rack. No voices were raised. Sentences were present. According to reports, Ty said, "I don't want to hurt you." "Then don't," Evelyn said, establishing a boundary rather than a dagger. Ty went on, "I didn't ask for this." None of that proves or disproves any purported meeting or thread. It just reads like two people preventing themselves from breaking in a corridor with poor illumination and too many witnesses. "Neither did I," Evelyn responded, "which is why we decide how it ends." The myth spread by midday when an unknown account shared what it termed partial logs of pins on a downtown hotel lobby, a late-night diner, and a parking garage that everyone uses when the main lot is full. A tech-savvy fan pointed out that the GPS metadata appeared to have been pasted and that the typefaces didn't match across screenshots. Another fan, who was as certain, claimed that exporting from specific phones causes alterations. We're observing how certainty can multiply in different ways, not making any judgments about that. As the strands twisted into knots that wanted to be conclusions, emotions were running high. If you believe those who read the internal note, Jackie's response was straightforward. "If something is real, we will say so with consent. If it is not, we will say so with care." Following the note, there was a slight change in tone on the lot. It was evident when the staff gave water before posing queries and when a stylist used two hands rather than one to fix a sleeve. These actions make a day bearable, but do not put an end to a rumor. It is the type of drama that prevents individuals from breaking, not the type that is popular. That afternoon's taping took a different form. The first piece, a community profile that made people grin, landed effortlessly. Jackie then swiveled her chair slightly in the direction of the tiny live audience. "Level as a placid lake," she murmured. "We know timelines are buzzing. Private lives will not be litigated here. However, we shall demonstrate what it looks like to pause." The room emitted a sigh, as though it had been granted permission to be polite. In a brief statement, Chantel reiterated that she had seen the material and would neither read or display anything on television. Ty didn't contribute to the cacophony. Her microphone remained cool. In what some later referred to as the evening's most honest movement, Evelyn raised her glass and put it down without sipping. From the control room, an intriguing item emerged, a printed procedure page that was clipped to a folder with the title, Review. It outlined procedures for consent check-ins, external verification, and a posting halt until all stakeholders had been contacted. The folder was hidden next to a pile of run-of-show cards rather than being theatrically displayed. Nevertheless, someone mumbled, "There's a process," after seeing the tab, and for some reason, that statement gained momentum on its own. Because the concept of a process felt new, almost subversive, in a culture that was based on immediate takes. The silence was not to everyone's taste. Some bloggers promoted the idea that quiet equates to confession and restraint to guilt. Quickly following that argument were counterarguments. Quiet can also signify breath, and people take breath when they choose not to bleed for applause. The family was split in the comments on those blogs as well, but now the division was more about how to act when you don't know than it was about who did what. Then something unexpected happened. Security film stills from two of the alleged meeting nights were shared online by a local cafe owner. For people were seated by the window in the first still. There was no Ty or husband, only two producers and two interns using a shared laptop. A late-night timestamp in the second image matched the purported thread, but the faces were obscured by glare, making it impossible to identify the individuals. Within an hour, the cafe owner removed the post, adding, "I don't want to be part of this," but by then, the stills had been screenshotted, analyzed, and included into the arguments of both sides. When evidence tries to survive on the internet, it acts as a mirror for your pre-existing beliefs. One side said, "See," and the other said, "Also see." Meanwhile, in camera-free chambers, the private labor went on. A generic name was used to reserve a small meeting room. Water, Kleenex, a discreet chocolate box, and an iPad with a calendar open. We are only able to disclose what two different staff members claimed to have seen when they passed the frosted glass: slow nods, prolonged pauses, and a pen tapping once before resting. We are unable to identify who sat in what chairs at those times. When language is attempting to heal rather than score, it travels differently. A new rumor attempted to take center stage as evening turned to night, a purported voice message from an insider threatening to dump everything if a certain person didn't come clean. It sounded dramatic, primarily because it utilized the internet's favorite cudgel, come clean. Let them decide, let professionals verify, let friends be friends out of frame, was the quieter chorus that emerged almost instantly. It wasn't the loudest, but it hummed like a grounding tone. A minor but significant trend emerged on social media. Individuals sharing their own boundary scripts. One person said, "I can love a show and still not demand a confession." Another person wrote, "I can choose compassion even if I'm curious." It's easy to characterize it as cheesy, but someone stitched together footage of Jackie declaring, "We don't humiliate people here," from different seasons and added, "Hold to it." In reality, doing it at scale is very difficult. However, enough people did it for one night that the pile-on resembled a pile-under, which was stable enough for those on stage to stand on while the weather passed. As automobiles lined up under buzzing lamps, there was one last, noteworthy moment in the lot. Ty stopped near the passenger door, looked back at the building, and waved to no one in particular with 2 fingers. With her chin up and keys in her fist, Evelyn crossed to her own car in a position akin to a phrase that ends with a period rather than an exclamation. After talking softly to a producer while standing by the curb, Chantel put her phone in her pocket even more. Jackie lingered at the stage door long enough to give a specific thank you to a night guard and a custodian. All of this doesn't explain a mystery. All of it tells of a night when people used verbs like wait, question, verify, and protect rather than the verb of choice on the internet. Explode. What does that mean for the leaked pins and the purported late-night meetings? Remains contested, unverified, and projection attracting. It leaves friendships to be evaluated by their members rather than by the general public. It departs a stage that declined to transform a rumor into a theatrical production. Even when a spectacle would pay in clicks, the host continues to refuse them. And it gives us the same obligation that viewers kept typing and then erasing before publishing. Keep your curiosity and concern in one hand, and don't let either go. Because the only plot twist that doesn't require a receipt is gentleness, according to many who claim to have felt the room breathe during the night. People who claim to still be wearing headsets report a more consistent hum when the sun sets, as if the building had selected a slower heartbeat. We're not certifying that this is settled. Rather, we're tracking how a room attempted to quell a rumor without acting as though it never happened. The afternoon protocol had done its job. There were less wandering eyes, more clear lanes, and a written reminder on the call board that said, "Process first." Tonight we land quiet. A father whispering while holding a stack of brand new cue cards seemed, for once, like a strategy rather than a failure. When Jackie wants people to feel the ground beneath them, she walks the hallway at a slow, purposeful pace. She nodded at the lighting, checked the audio, and stopped by the wardrobe where Ty was standing, retrieving a final roll of lint that didn't need to be done. Jackie asked, keeping her voice within the distance between them, "Any needs?" With half jest and half prayer, Ty replied, "A door that locks." Jackie's assurance that "you'll have one" felt more like a key sliding over a table than a statement. Evelyn was adjusting a cuff around the corner and spoke softly to a woman who looked like a counselor and had a clipboard. Some claimed to have heard her say, "I can forgive later." The phrase, "Today I just won't be consumed," spread like a lantern across the workforce. Then came the scene that had the potential to become dramatic, but didn't. Chantel came forward holding a manila packet, which she clutched like a library book rather than brandishing. According to a camera op who turned away out of deference, she told Jackie in the wings, "I'll give this to legal and bow out." Jackie retorted, "No reading, no teasing, no timeline. Thank you. We are reflecting the handoff as reported by those who have learned to pay more attention to temperature than headlines, not verifying what, if anything, was inside." A little crowd crept in on stage with a mutter that seemed almost offensive. The open rolling, gentle and straightforward, the first chair lecture remained on a community grant. Jackie then made a discreet signal by easing her seat slightly toward the center and speaking into a stillness that she had assisted in creating. The clapping wasn't wild. Rather, it was warm, the uncommon type you hear when people agree to be better than their reflexes. "We know things are loud out there," she added, "and we'll be clear about one thing in here. No screenshots on air. No pressure disguised as curiosity." Ty didn't give any remarks. As a diver studies before air, she laid both palms flat on her knees. "Simple as a line of chalk," she declared. "I'm choosing privacy, so we can choose truth later." Evelyn didn't hold herself up. She went on, "I won't perform pain." Chantel took a deep breath and held it close to her chest. "I will ask for verification before judgment," she said. "I acted clumsy, but I will not turn anyone's life into content." Neither of those statements confirmed the rumors nor downplayed the injury. Fans still see the startled flash throughout the video, but it's in a softer register, more like, "I hope they're okay," than drop receipts. 3 frames of a lobby still that might have been from an old B-roll bin were shown when a backstage monitor stuttered, causing a slight shaking. With the steadiness of a metronome, Jackie raised a hand. The room genuinely chuckled when she said, "We don't read tea leaves in pixels," which was a tiny release valve. A stage manager placed a slim folder with the neatly printed words, "Review steps," on the edge of the table. Agreement, order, empathy. Like feet on stones in a stream, you could feel eyeballs falling on the words. We are pointing out that structure provided a bridge where conjecture continued to try to swim, not that any research confirmed or denied anything. They might have returned to spectacle with the ensuing Q&A. Jackie wasn't alone when a nurse in row 3 asked, "What does repair look like when you have to do it in public?" Like a light, she allowed it to move. None of it trended like an explosion. Instead, it all sounded like scaffolding. Ty stated, "Time we don't have to explain." Evelyn added, "A boundary that doesn't punish." Chantel remarked, "A pause long enough for professionals to tell us what's real." The lobby lights went down to that gentle wash that gives a stage a church-like feel after the wrap. Jackie requested 10 feet of air from the crew for the principals. She led Evelyn and Ty down a side hallway to a tiny room with a lamp that was softer than the overheads and a couch that had withstood for seasons. A mediator waited with an open notebook and a silent stance. The door clicked, a crisp sound that was entirely related to choosing and had nothing to do with drama. "We are only able to share the terms that came up after the words tomorrow at 10. Not on camera, no surprise phone calls, and we will both have veto." To some ears, that seems like avoidance. We are unable to map what was said in that session. To others, akin to the initial stones of a pathway. An anonymous user claimed to have voice notes that would resolve the matter, and a fresh twist attempted to seize the microphone outside. "If you have something legitimate, send it to legal, not a timeline," was the cooler response that emerged within minutes. For once, that response gained traction. A tiny group of followers started sharing information regarding GPS drift, digital fakery, and how timestamps might be manipulated without malicious intent. Though the intonation changed from accusation to literacy, possibly the only thing that ever stops a pylon, emotions were still strong. 3 paper cups of chamomile put on a sideboard with a note that read, "For the part of you that's just a person," garnered silent affection afterward. The crew claims that no one posed it. Someone simply put it down and continued walking. Although those gestures are rarely used in CapCut edits, they allow for the recording of future events without making people into suspenseful characters. The remark, "You can love a cast and still not demand a confession," was submitted by a friend of the show while cars were idling under summer moths. It didn't overpower the louder takes, but it made enough inroads in the comment sections to shift the mood of a few rooms. As is typically the case when care requires time, the family was left split, but a startling number of people started posting, "I'll wait." This is not a verdict. It's a position. 2 stones, meanwhile, fell into the river of rumors. Initially, a local cafe owner revealed that their late-night logs revealed a lengthy table of producers and interns on one of the purported dates, their faces obscured by darkness and reflection. Second, depending on which phone export settings you believe, a parking garage receipt with a timestamp that both matched and didn't match the online pins appeared. Neither pebble proved anything, nor did it sync. However, they did change some headlines to question marks, so that's something. The facility had returned to its original appearance by the time Jackie returned to the stage door. Tape peeling, gels heaped, a plant overly green beneath cheap lights. At the barricade, a teenager sought guidance regarding buddies who quarrel in public. As she signed a playbill, Jackie stated, "Choose the smallest genuine kindness and do it." The child nodded as if someone had just given him a tool rather than a take, and he said, "Then do it again tomorrow." Ty followed, hooded and with steady gaze. She raised her hand without making it a show when a voice said, "We're with you." Evelyn trailed behind, chin level, shoulders squared. She mouthed, "I will," as someone whispered, "Protect your heart." Chantel was the last to arrive, slipping her phone further into her pocket, as if it were a pledge she intended to keep. Even though they didn't walk together, it didn't seem like a break. It appeared to be room for breathing. Additionally, the night did not absolve them, condemn them, or turn them into a tidy arc that could be scored and sold. Verbs like wait, verify, question, and protect are selected by a host and 3 ladies alone. We are recounting how a program chose not to convert a rumor into a set piece and how a fandom, fractured, yes, found a few phrases strong enough to rely on, but we are not verifying any late-night meetings or leaked logs. Fans are shocked because, in a society that teaches us to want receipts before we want people to be okay, shock is a reaction. As is typically the case, when displays reveal sensitive information, emotions were running high. By the end of the day, the line between the camps felt less like a tear and more like a seam that might hold if no one yanks, even though the family was still split. Tomorrow at 10, a stagehand muttered to no one, looping cable into perfect loops back inside. This is how you say a hope aloud, so it can find its way back. The exit sign continued to buzz, the house lights went out, and in a conference room, a calendar displayed a block of time that no one else could see. Perhaps the review will make things clearer. It might make things more difficult. Perhaps it will only provide those in the center with something more authentic to stand on than a cluttered timeline. Whatever happens, the final note of the evening was a boundary rather than a cliffhanger. And that's more uncommon than any twist in this genre. Morning delivered on its promise at 10, gray light accumulating like a silent wave on the conference room carpet. The stillness, according to some who claimed to have been stationed close to the door, was intentional rather than tense, the kind that results when everyone has made the decision not to waste a precious opportunity. The corridor complied with the little sign that read, "Occupied," on the doorknob. We are communicating the outlines of statements that escaped when the door opened momentarily to let fresh air in and then snapped shut once more, not verifying what was spoken inside. With a legal pad in her lap and a pen that was still but not capped, Jackie was seated closest to the window. With her shoulders squared in a somewhat rehearsed manner and her palms pressed on her knees, Ty took the left corner of the couch. With her gaze steady and her fingers loosely clasped, Evelyn took a seat on the right. Chantel picked the chair closest to the door, as though it would prevent any additional mayhem from entering. According to a staff member with good ears, the mediator's 3 ground rules: no declarations on behalf of others, permission before questioning, and nothing leaving the room without everyone naming it, sounded like this. The mediator also had a gentler posture and a quiet voice. The first actual words were said slowly. Even in her voice, Ty remarked, "I'm afraid of the parts that I don't know and the parts that the internet thinks it knows." Evelyn responded without hesitation. Chantel's apology did not attempt to be a spell. "I'm afraid of being cast as the worst version of myself by people who weren't there." Jackie didn't tie ribbons on any of it. "I wanted to stop a wound from widening," she explained, "and I chose a door that scraped everyone on the way through." She stated, "We are here because we can be. We don't have to prove it to the world." The door clicked, the water was refilled, the cart moved in, and there was a gentle knock. Instead of asking about admissions, the mediator inquired about results. They inquired as to what would safe look like this week. None of those lines bury or confirm a rumor. They draft architecture. Tai stated, "No more blind corners." Evelyn added, "No more trial by clip." Chantel stated, "No more me as narrator." Jackie added, "No more props that pretend to be truth." Then, if the hall's witnesses are to be believed, the soul-heated exchange occurred. Tai met Evelyn's eyes and then looked at the mediator to get permission before saying, "I need to ask you a question you won't like." A nod. There was a pause long enough to count breath before Evelyn spoke with the precision of someone who refuses to be bound by her own sentence. "Were there meetings that could be misread?" she said, "even if they were innocent?" "Conversations took place," she stated. "They weren't love stories. They weren't treacherous." Tai choked. "They weren't for a camera." She responded, "Thank you." But her voice was one of relief and the regret that none of this had required air, not one of triumph. "We are conveying the contours as they were provided. We are not validating that transaction. We may state that no one got up from their chair like a gavel." Pauses lasted a long time, and voices remained low. They remained face down when phones buzzed. It wasn't dramatic when a tissue box moved across the table. The verbs choose, verify, halt, and mend were used often by the mediator. Outside, the corridor continued to beat slowly, like you might in a building where people are attempting to avoid dropping anything that can still be handled. The internet attempted to tear the room apart once more as the center remained intact. A dim lobby, 2 silhouettes, and a timestamp that half of the comments deemed conclusive and the other half deemed doctored were all featured in a recent clip that went viral. A tech account dissected the scene frame by frame, highlighting reflecting glare and compression faults that, with enough willpower, might transform any two individuals into any two other people. Lighting after midnight turns everyone become ghosts, according to a post made by a cafe server. Before being absorbed by more aggressive views, the message garnered a few hundred hearts, but it nevertheless appended a warning. Once back inside, the topic of discussion shifted to how to return to the stage without stoking the rumors. Jackie proposed, "We can record the charity segment we owe, and we can include a brief note about our process." Tai nodded. Evelyn nodded in agreement, saying, "No drama language." Chantel raised her hand half an inch and said, "No tell-all tone." "I'm not on the panel," she declared. The mediator emphasized the word consent, which we've heard more times this week than most seasons combined. "I'll sit this out." They advised choosing a sentence that neither of you would regret reading a year later if there was a combined sentence. As if the ductwork were exhaling, the sound of the building shifted slightly when the door opened again. The group left the hall quickly. They walked as though they had discovered that walking slowly is not the same as waiting. Rather, it is the decision to avoid tripping. The team moved away without exchanging glares. Before anyone could take a picture of the gesture, a father placed 3 cups of chamomile on a console table and left. For once, the screens remained down rather than up as supporters outside the wall held their breath and their phones. The soft weight of a room knowing it has been entrusted with something was carried by the taping that afternoon. The band's music became softer. The wink was skipped by the frigid open. Jackie set the tone for the warm-up by facing the crowd rather than teasing them. She said, "We're going to give you a good hour, and we're going to do it without turning real lives into puzzles." The clapping that followed seemed more like agreement than enthusiasm, which is a victory in a week like this. The night, however, desired one more test. A side monitor malfunctioned once more in the middle of the hour, spitting up a still that appeared to be one of the purported pins. It was quickly killed in the control room. Jackie responded to the collective inhalation made by the audience by raising her palms steadily. "Wrong file," she stated, adding, "and wrong place for any of that." It was anchored, not sharp. She turned to face the visitor with such poise and cleanliness that it seemed like a compassion practice. The show continued without feigning indifference, which is a more difficult trick than it seems. The passageway did not turn into a stage after rap. The neat little phrase, "Vendor Escort Exit, 1742, was entered in a security log. If you required it, it would signify everything, but if you didn't, it would mean nothing. The man in the cap, if he was there at all, never again wandered the corridors. when words would be awkward. Ty and Evelyn would meet eyes in a corner and nod once. With her phone still facing down, Chantel waited near a vending machine until the traffic subsided before sneaking out. Before returning to the conference room to give the mediator a brief list of next measures, Jackie signed one poster and personally thanked the boom op. The separation lessened slightly on the sidewalk. "We'll wait," one fan replied, adding "me too." And the responses under that little thread became longer than the fights that typically consume everything. As was to be expected, a few loud users attempted to rekindle the flames elsewhere by posting old videos with fresh subtitles. However, a startlingly high percentage of respondents provided notes about how GPS drift might make a pin appear more dramatic than the night felt, as well as links to digital literacy primers. That isn't the answer, but it is a rejection to let an algorithm to determine the destiny of a friendship. The dispute took a different form in vehicles, residences, and break rooms. Some wrote their own scripts. "I can be invested without being invasive. I can be curious without demanding blood. And I can accept that private repair is a real thing even when I can't see it." These sentences don't trend at the speed of outrage, but they stay in the body longer. People ask less, "Did it happen?" and more, "How do you behave when you don't know?" They enable you to enter a workplace that is based on lighting and lenses, and keep in mind that you are a person with a backbone and free will, not a plot point. By the time dusk turned to darkness, once more, the facility had the typical appearance of a place that has just survived a scare: scuffed floors, folded gels, and a plant that is still alive despite the fluorescent hum. To soothe anyone who requires order to fall asleep, a stagehand neatly wrapped cables into circles. There was a little metronome for endings when a cleaning cart rumbled by. The light in the conference room went out. The door's sign came down. The identical words as yesterday were still displayed on a tablet. "Tomorrow at 10. A verdict is not being announced. We are not making a rumor official. We're telling you how it felt to be in a set that used more periods rather than exclamation marks, how 4 individuals discovered the difference between hiding and pausing, and how host utilized a show to exercise an ethic rather than exploit a vein." The family was split and will continue to reverberate because families inside and outside of screens disagree on what carries curiosity. Fans who are surprised will always find a foothold because shock is rapid, and emotions that are high will always be true because stakes make hearts loud. However, they added a new sentence tonight. They selected procedure. And that line might be the only one that allows any of them to sleep throughout a week that attempted to force them to select spectacle. And that's where the night leaves you, with timelines still begging for receipts, standing between murmurs and patience, watching a room choose process above spectacle. Every beat, from Chantel's meticulous context on Jackie's stage to Ty and Evelyn's request for solitude, led to the same conclusion: let experts confirm and let friends fix off-camera. The family was split between those who want quick answers and those who want kindness to prevail for once, leaving fans stunned and emotions running high. We're responding to what participants claim to have seen, what insiders allude to, and what those grainy videos seem to imply when screens transform uncertainty into certainty. We're not verifying any claims here. Tell me, then, what would feel fair at this moment if you were in their circle? Would you rather wait for a complete report before anyone talks at all, or should a joint phrase that only states, "We're working through this," be dropped? Do you believe that the late-night pins are the result of internet modifications, haphazard optics, or benign overlaps? If your kitchen table were in danger, how would you strike a balance between curiosity and caution? Your opinion counts because it influences which version of the story, the one that calls for bloodshed or the one that allows for healing, travels further. Tap like if you like commentary that prioritizes compassion so that others who choose subtlety over volume can hear it. To receive verified updates, silent clarifications, and any joint message the group choose to share on their terms, hit the bell and subscribe button. Tell us what you think should be the unavoidable border, what accountability looks like without shame, and what closure you believe would be beneficial. Ask a buddy who watches the show how they would respond to the truth in front of thousands of people. Please respond politely. Unless the persons involved in the story tell you otherwise, we'll continue to separate fact from fiction and remind you of what is confirmed, what is conjecture, and what should remain confidential.